I want to talk to you today in a moment about living like you were dying. That's the way we need to live. What if we really did live like we were dying every day? What if we took the attitude, I'm going to give it everything I've got? Tim McGraw's got a song out there. I love that song. Live like you were dying. There's a lot of things. There's a 10-year-old boy, he was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he's thinking for a minute. He's 10. And he's thinking about terrorism, and news got nuclear war on it, and hear about wars everywhere. And he thinks about it. What do I want to be when I grow up? And then he says, alive. We all share that, don't we? I want to be alive when I grow up. So the love of life is deep within the human soul. What about life? Jesus said in John 10:10, I mentioned it earlier, I'm come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. God really wants us to live an abundant life. If you knew you had 30 days to live, and that was it, 30 days, and that's all you would live, and you could live your life any way you pleased, would your life be radically transformed, or would you just keep doing what you're doing right now? Would you keep thinking the same thoughts you're thinking? Would you keep praying the same amount of time you pray now? Would you read the Bible the same amount you're reading it now? Would you love your wife the same way you're loving her now? Would you love your children and your grandchildren, your parents, the same way you're loving them now? If you knew you only had 30 days to live. If we lived that way all the time, life would be a lot more satisfying. Joan Baez, remember her? She put it this way in a song, you don't get to choose how you're going to die or when. You only get to choose how you're going to live now. That's really true. Tim McGraw, live like you were dying. Matthew 10:32. I want to read this passage. Turn your Bibles to Matthew 10:32 through 39. I'm going to pull out some of these scriptures this morning, and we're going to talk about it. I know it's Memorial Day, and I thought about and prayed about preaching a sermon about that, and this one kind of mixes that in about the war that we're in. How many know we're in a war? We're in a war today, whether we realize it or not. Jesus in verse 34, which is kind of a shocking verse, he said, I did not come to bring peace. Now that's an unusual statement from Jesus, isn't it? I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. It's kind of hard to imagine Jesus with a sword, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, we think about him, most people think about him being meek and mild and rolling over and playing dead, and letting people walk all over him. That's not who he was. But it is unusual to think of Jesus wielding a sword. Why would he carry it anyway? What's he talking about? I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. The sword symbolizes Jesus' ability to divide humanity. See, there has to be a division. We sang it about the army this morning. We already sang about that, right? There's an army rising up. Jesus just wants to make clear who's in his army and who isn't. Who's wearing the uniform and who isn't. I think there's some folks wearing the T-shirt of Team Jesus who aren't on the team. There's some folks who are wearing the uniform and putting on the armor, but they're not on the team. Not really. They're not really in the army of the Lord. This text forces us to think about whether or not we want to be on the Lord's team when the going gets tough. In these verses that I'll read in these next few minutes, there are three movements in them, really. Confession, division, and decision. Keep those three things in mind as we go through this. Confession is important because confession leads to a division that leads to a decision. Today, Jesus said, how far are you willing to go with me in this war we're fighting? Will you be willing to die for me, or will you want to run back to the barracks at the first shot? Matthew 10:32. Let's read those first two verses in Matthew 10. Therefore, everyone who will acknowledge me before men. Okay. When you're not in this church, is your confession and your acknowledgement of Jesus the same as when you are here? Are you proclaiming the same things to the people who are not your brothers and sisters that you're proclaiming to those who are? It's pretty easy to be a Christian at Faith and Wisdom Church on Sunday morning at 10:30. Choir singing, raising our hands or praising the Lord. But out there, at the store, at the place where you work, on your job, with your other family members who don't proclaim to be Christians, is your confession the same? Therefore, everyone who will acknowledge me before men, I will also acknowledge him before my Father in heaven. Why do we make a proclamation? Because we know the Word of God is true. And when we make a confession, a proclamation, a declaration, we're saying what's really in our heart. So if you are saying in here that you believe, but yet out there you don't proclaim the same message, do you really believe? Is there an acknowledgement from Jesus to the Father about you? You ever think about that? What do Jesus and God talk about when they talk about you? The Father and the Son. What do they say about you, Wayne? What do they say about you, Ken? What do they say about me, McSpadden? What do they say? Jesus said, I'll acknowledge you if you'll acknowledge me before men. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father in heaven. That's pretty serious. And we need to take this literally. Jesus means either we confess him or we deny him. We acknowledge him and our love for him, or we deny him and we say, not that much. I love Jesus, but not that much. I'm not going to be, I'm going to go along with the crowd. I love Jesus, but only when I'm in here. I love Jesus, but only when somebody's watching. I love Jesus, but don't catch me alone somewhere in the dark, because you'll be seeing activities in my life and thought processes that don't add up with what I'm really confessing. Take this literally. Andrew White's a pastor of a large congregation in Baghdad, Iraq. That's a place where you have to be careful to proclaim Jesus. Do you know that? It's mostly controlled by Muslims. He can only spend a part of his time in Baghdad because ISIS, ISIS is still alive, although they've been tamped down. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all the Muslim groups are still out there, still creating havoc, still blowing up people, still killing those. So he can't stay there all the time because they're after him. They want to destroy him. He says, whatever you've heard or read about the ISIS atrocities, the reality in the Middle East is far worse than what you read and what you hear. Not only did ISIS close every church in Mosul. How many know the name Mosul? You know that's Nineveh, don't you? Nineveh, where Jonah went. That's Nineveh. Mosul is Nineveh. They tried to systematically destroy every mark of the Christian faith in their territory that they were controlling. Now, they've lost a lot of that, thank God, and thank President Trump and the military here in America. Thank God for soldiers who are willing to risk their lives. He told the story that I read yesterday, Pastor White, about 4 Christian children under the age of 15. Their parents were Christians who had already been killed. Now here are these 4 kids, 15 and younger, in captivity from ISIS. The terrorists demanded that they say the words about conversion to Islam or they'd be killed. And the children, all under 15, said, no, we love Yeshua, Jesus. We've always loved Yeshua. He's always loved us. We've always allowed him to control our lives. Like we sang this morning, Yeshua has been Lord of our lives, and he still is. And we won't say the words you're asking us to say. We can't. So those 4 children had their heads cut off. That's what we're facing, folks. We're facing terror and evil of the largest proportion. How do you respond to that? You just sit and cry. What can you do? We have prayed for ISIS in our prayer meetings. We prayed for Al-Qaeda. We prayed for Muslims to come to Christ. And did you know there is a revival? Once they truly hear about Jesus, there's a revival in the Muslim communities of the world today. Once they know who Jesus is, once they know his love, once they experience who he is, like we know. We live in strange and dangerous times today. No doubt about that. Over the past few years, and the terrorists have struck in New York and Ottawa and London and Paris, Istanbul, San Bernardino, Florida, other places. You know, they murdered 147 students in Kenya. They beheaded 21 Egyptian Christians in Libya. Then they shot and beheaded 28 Ethiopian Christians in Libya. They threw a dozen Christians overboard who were trying to get away, crossing from Africa to Europe. They kidnapped 220 in Syria, Christians, and they used a suicide truck bomb to kill 60 people at a police training center, put a bomb on a plane that killed 224 people, mostly Christians who were returning from a conference. In Syria, Christians are still under attack. Syria's a tough place. There's no real good answer there. Recently, rebels overthrew a town of Malula. A lot of the inhabitants there speak Aramaic. That's the language Jesus spoke. They came in to see who would convert to Islam and who would not. A resident of Malula called her fiance's cell phone only to have a Syrian terrorist answer the phone and say to her, "He's not here. He wouldn't convert to Islam," and we slit his throat. Listen, folks, we're in a war. This writer who was writing the story at the end of her column quoted Dietrich Bonhoeffer. How many ever know who that is? You ever read that writing? Wow. Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. When we go quiet, when we don't speak out, when we don't say Jesus is Lord, then our silence is deafening and it is evil. He said not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. That pretty well sums it up, doesn't it? We can sit comfortably in our air-conditioned churches, and we can be blessed of God, and we can speak about all the goodness of God and the things that are going on. But when we get into the world, there is a war going on, and we'd better be weaponized. We'd better be armored up. We'd better be ready to fight the battle, because that's who Jesus called us to be, the army that's rising up. Amen? Don't go to sleep on me this morning. Would we have the courage of our convictions? Would we give in to save our own life? Pastor White told of another story, and I read this yesterday, and it struck my heart. Father of 4 children was grabbed by ISIS, and they said, "Convert to Islam, or we will kill your 4 children while you're watching." Shaken and terrorized, he told them no, and they went for one of the children, and then he said, "Stop, yes, I will." So he said the words that they wanted to hear. Later, deeply ashamed of what he'd done, he asked Pastor White, "Does Yeshua, Jesus, not love me anymore? Is he done with me?" He said, "I said those words because I couldn't bear to see my children killed while I was standing there." That sort of question makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What if they lined all your kids up? What if they lined up the things that you felt were most precious and said, "Unless you convert to Islam, unless you say what we want you to say, we're going to kill them all"? You know, we shouldn't condemn that man until we stand in his shoes. We can't say he was wrong until we've experienced what he experienced. See, we need to hear these stories. And I know they're gross. I know they're terrible. But that's what Jesus meant when he said, "I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. I came to divide humanity between those who will stand with me and those who will not." Where are you today? You see, that's the real question, isn't it? What's the most important thing to you today? So this confession leads to a dividing, to a division. Matthew 10:34 again. "Don't assume that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. So he's the great divider of humanity. If you want a non-controversial Jesus, you'll have to look somewhere other than in the Word of God. Was he controversial then? In the New Testament? When he was born, was he controversial? Yes, they tried to kill him. Was he controversial when he walked the shores of Galilee? Absolutely. Was he controversial when he healed the sick on the Sabbath? Yes, he was. He was destroying the traditions. He was breaking down the walls. He was dividing humanity because of the confession that people were making, saying, I will stand with Jesus Christ. A lot of people don't want to hear this kind of message. They want the gentle Jesus, who's mild and meek and well-mannered and only loves and never confronts. Does he bring peace? Will he bring peace? Yes, but this is not that day. When he comes back again, he'll bring peace. But not today, unless he comes today. You see, the thing that we forget sometimes is there's a war going on. And this sword of the Lord that Jesus brings is for us to wield as well. We have to take up his cross, but we also have to take up his sword. We have to be willing. We pick up our sword, we enter the fray. It's a war going on. We put on the armor. We advance the kingdom of God into a world that's dark and needy and lost and dying. Well-behaved, timid Christians will most likely not change the world. Christians who are ashamed to speak the name of Jesus in public places and say, Jesus is my Lord, will not change the world. Don't be surprised when you do that close friends and family and business associates walk away from you, ridicule you. Jesus said it would be this way. Here's what it says in verse 35 and 36. For I came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Jesus said this is not going to be a nice cookout in the garden. No. One brother believes, another rejects. One father follows, and the son walks away. Twin sisters part ways over the gospel. I don't know, all kinds of different ways you could look at this. Some people may be openly hostile when you truly take a stand for Jesus. And you should expect that. We should expect that. We should not expect to never have any flack coming our way. Verse 37. This division then leads to a decision, doesn't it? 37. The person who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. This is tough. The person who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Remember Abraham? When God asked him to give up his most precious possession, the promised son, Isaac, Abraham was willing to take him to an altar and raise the knife. And the angel of the Lord said, stop. God's looking at our hearts today. He's looking at who you love most. He says, the person who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Anyone finding his life will lose it, and anyone losing his life for my sake or because of me will find his life. It's hard sayings Jesus was saying here. You got to love Jesus more than parents or children. God, I'm glad he didn't include grandchildren there, aren't you? We can assume he meant that too. You love Jesus more than your wealth, your possessions, your house, your new car, your boat, your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, your grandson, your granddaughter. Hard to comprehend these verses to say, you mean I got to put all that aside? No, you just have to love Jesus more than you love any of that. And whatever it costs you to follow him, that's what he requires. Perhaps the best way to think about the last part of those verses, about saving your life or losing your life. You see, God's economy, his society is always upside down and backwards from the world. The world says, save yourself. And Jesus said, not only am I saving myself, I'm saving the world. The devil comes to you and says, save yourself first. You're more important than what you believe. That's not true. In February 2015, a lady named Emily Phillips was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She only knew one thing. Without a miracle, she didn't have long to live. So she sat down and she penned her own obituary. Now this is interesting, isn't it? It went viral on the internet. I found it. You can find it. Her name's Emily Phillips. It's very amazing, really. She was 69 years old when she found out she had cancer and when she died. And this thing it becomes autobiographical, actually. Sentimental, it was humorous. Here, the first sentence was this: "It pains me to admit it, but apparently I have passed away." That's kind of interesting. Later on, she speaks about various roles in her life as a wife, a mother, a teacher, friend, a grandmother. And she goes on and she says, "And if you don't believe it, just ask me. Wait, I'm afraid it's too late for questions. Sorry." And she keeps on writing with that humorous attitude. You have to admire someone who maintains her sense of humor as she's exiting this world. But she had a clue, evidently, that this was not all there is. She had a clue that basing everything on this earth. Now, we get into the supernatural here, don't we? We've been talking about supernatural for almost a year now. When you get into the supernatural, you realize that this is not all there is. That this is actually not that important at all. Oh, you know, the reason, the old preacher that got up on that Sunday morning and said, "Everybody wants to go to heaven, stand up." One old guy didn't stand up. And he said, "Don't you want to go to heaven?" He said, "Yeah, but I thought you were getting up a load to go today." So, a lot of us, we're ready, we're just not anxious. And why are we not anxious? We're not anxious because we love people. I love that woman right there. I don't want to go to heaven yet because I love her. I want us to go at the same time. You see, and my kids wouldn't want to hear this, but I'd like for all of the whole family to go at the same time, but they don't want to know. They don't want to hear that. That's the way we feel, though. That's why we want to stay here. We don't want to break these ties. We don't want to break these bonds of love, these bonds that are so tightly woven in our lives. So when we sum up our years on earth, at the end of her autobiographical obituary, she says these words: "So I was born, I blinked, and it was over." Whew. That really struck me yesterday. I was born, I blinked, done. Reminded me of James 4:14, which says, "What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes." That's all life is. So what's more important, following Jesus or hanging on to the stuff of this earth? We're like vapor in a pane in a window, you know? We keep our house cold inside. Humidity comes in here to Branson. I pulled up the shade this morning. I couldn't see anything because it was all fogged up. I remember as a kid, you might remember this, I'd blow on a window and try to write my name. You and I could never get past Gary and maybe an M before it vanished. That's the way life is. We try to establish everything around what we know now, but we can't. This is not what life is about. This platform, this church building, these seats, all this stuff is not what this life is about. The psalmist says we're like grass on a prairie. Here's what he said in Psalm 90. "In the morning it flourishes and sprouts anew, but toward evening it fades and withers away." So where are you today? Are you in the summertime of your life? Are you in the autumn? Are you in the spring? Life is nothing but seasons. We're not, you know who Charles Barkley is? A basketball player? I like the way he said it. He said, he was talking about aging athletes when they were asking him, "Are you going to ever play basketball again?" This was from years ago. "Well, no, I'm not." He said, he said, "Father Time is undefeated." He's talking about aging athletes. He said, "You can't beat Father Time. I mean, when you're done, you're kind of done. You can't go out there and do it anymore." Ran across a website looking at all this. Had a motto on it. It said, "On a long time line, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. You will, unless Jesus comes back, you will one day take your last breath on this earth." George Bernard Shaw, who is a writer, British playwright, he said it this way: The statistics on death are very impressive. 1 out of every 1 person dies. Hebrews 9:27 puts it kind of starkly. It says, it's appointed unto man once to die. Do you know 150,000 people will die today? Worldwide. 150,000. That means 56 million people every year pass from this life. That kind of numbs the mind, though. You think 56,000. I think it's easier to go back to what Emily Phillips said. So I was born, I blinked, then I died. How are we supposed to live? Live like we're dying? Yes, in one sense. But also live like we have the abundant life of Jesus. It's a dichotomy, isn't it? It's an odd way of looking at life itself. And on this Memorial Day, when we're memorializing those people that we've loved and who passed on, see, Jesus calls us from the cross and He calls us to the cross. He calls us both ways. You know, we used to sing that song, the world behind me, the cross before me, the world behind me, the cross before me, the world behind me, the cross before me, no turning back, no turning back. Good singing, Pastor. That was a recording. ISIS understands this principle better than we do. And we're the ones who have abundant life. They call Christians, you know, ISIS calls Christians people of the cross. That's why they crucify some people. They actually hang them on cross. We don't hear much about that. Because if the news would report that, it would remind people of Jesus. So they don't talk about that. They just talk about beheading and slitting the throats and all that. But they don't want to tell people that ISIS is crucifying Christians on a cross, because then the whole world would be reminded of what Jesus did and His blood that was shed to save and to heal us. But I'm here to remind you today, ISIS understands that following Jesus always leads to a cross. And we sometimes forget that. They remember it, we forget. What's wrong with that picture? We must always be remembering, be mindful of the fact that if you try to save your life, you will lose it in the end. If you lose your life, however, for Jesus' sake, you will find it. It will be yours. It's the old principle about you never have something unless you're willing to give it away. If you hold too tightly, it's not yours because you haven't given it the opportunity to see if it will come back. Michelle had a poster in her room on her closet door. If you love something, set it free. If it's yours, it'll return. If it doesn't return, it wasn't yours anyway. Jesus is saying to us, let go. Turn loose. Turn loose of the earth. Turn loose of the stuff. Look, the church was born on the wrong side of history. But is it worth it to serve Jesus? Absolutely. But you'll have to make up your own mind. I can't make it up for you. If I could make up everybody's mind, there's a couple of guys that are very nice to me when I stop to get something to drink over here at one of these service stations, you know, run in and get something to drink and come back and get in the car. They're very nice to me, and I've talked to them, and I've prayed with a couple of them. There's about 4 or 5 different people work in that place. But they have to make up their own mind. I've told them about Jesus. I've told them to come to church. I've told them that Jesus loves them. And one of them, I prayed with one of them. And I prayed with 2 different people there, one lady and one man, at different times. A couple of them call me preacher. They know I don't look like the boater when I come in on Sunday morning if I walk in there. You see, these are troubling times. And it is true that Christians are under attack around the world. And we've been so sheltered. We've been so comfortable. We've been so set apart here in Branson, in this region of the country. But I'm here to tell you, if we believe the Bible, if you believe the Word of God, you should never despair, no matter what situation comes your way. Because you know what? No Supreme Court decision can put Jesus back in the grave. Do I have an amen on that? Amen. It doesn't matter what they tell us. That has to happen. And no terrorist attack can reverse the resurrection. He is alive. He will stay alive forevermore. They can burn the churches, which they're doing around the world, but they can never destroy the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is alive because He is alive. Yep, the church born on the wrong side of history. We've been on the wrong side of history since the church was born in Rome. I mean, the world looks at us and goes, But we're not the first generation of Christians who've been unpopular. I mean, they were beheaded in Rome, in the Roman Empire, because they were Christians, because they followed Jesus. We're not that bad off here. You may think it's terrible, but it's really not that bad. If you want to see bad, talk to the Syrian Christians, the Iraqi Christians, the Afghan Christians, Somalia Christians, plus many other countries. Feel like you're persecuted? You don't even know what that word means yet. We know this, though. For those people who are giving their lives for Jesus, they're warriors in the war. They're generals in the army. They're serving, and they're not recanting. And they're standing strong and tall. And they're continuing to say, Jesus is Lord. Even if you cut my head off, I'm saying, Jesus is Lord. We like to feel good about it. God's not surprised by the Supreme Court decisions in Washington. He's not floored by Planned Parenthood and all the 60 million babies that are being destroyed. Sad to hear that Ireland has succumbed to the political correctness. Heard it yesterday where they voted to allow abortion. They're one of the countries that had stood strong against it. We preach a risen Christ. He's not intimidated by ISIS or North Korea or Russia or China. He's not intimidated by any of these nations who are human. Let me tell you something. We preach a Christ who will save anyone who will believe. We preach a Christ who will rule over those nations one day. We preach a Christ who will lift people out of the sadness and the sickness of sin itself. Understand this. God has put you here for a purpose, for such a time as this. But if we get so caught up in our comfortableness, in the fact that we just like it the way it is, we've missed our purpose. Because God has made every one of us for a purpose. There's an assignment. We're to win souls. We're to bring people into the kingdom. Listen to these words about our Father God. Psalm 139, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit them together in my mother's womb. Your workmanship is marvelous. You were there while I was being formed. You saw me before I was born and scheduled each day of my life before I began to breathe. Isn't that awesome? What a passage. The Bible says you were a prescription baby. God prescribed you. He knew what you were going to be. Custom designed by the hand of an almighty God. You're no accident. Regardless, and let me say this carefully, regardless of the situation surrounding your birth, you're no accident. You were purposed by God. Amen. You're born with a purpose. Don't ever think of yourself as some accidental thing that just happened. No, no, no. God planned you before you were born. That's what's so tragic about abortion. Taking God's plans and destroying them before they have a breath. God has a plan for every human being. You're put on this earth for a purpose. There are things that God wants you to do. And I believe there are things that only you can do. Now, God may have to wait a while and see if you're going to do it. Maybe you won't get it done, but you're still a part of His plan. Ephesians 2:10, we are God's masterpiece. He's created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do the good things that He planned for us long ago. 1 Corinthians 6:20, you're not your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your body. Do what God's assigned you to do. Get busy about the things of God. We're in a war. You need to strap it on and get ready because we've got a fight ahead of us. There's a battle out there, folks. And if you don't know it, the church is being minimized day by day by day, squeezed smaller and smaller because the church that Jesus set in motion is not the church at large today. So it's dwindling, and we need revival. We need people to step up. C.S. Lewis said, never commit your happiness to the future. Happy work is best done by the man who takes his long-term plans somewhat lightly and works from moment to moment as to the Lord, because the present is the doorway to the future. You want to make God laugh? Tell Him your plan for your life. He knows you can't complete that. He knows that you need to have His plan for your life. So jump in. Grab hold. Just do it. Just go for what God has put out in front of you. You know, on September 11th, 2001, it was Dino that called us. We were living in Nashville then. He called and said, have you got the TV on? We said, no. He said, you need to turn it on. He said, something that just flew into the World Trade Center. I said, really? So we flipped it on. And about the time we flipped it on, the second plane hit. You know what happened that day, don't you? People were stirred. People were questioning turmoil and trouble and angst, and nobody knew what was happening. And families were calling friends and family, and they were saying, are you okay? People who were living in New York, parents were calling children, and brothers and sisters who hadn't talked for years had called each other that day. They were talking. The phone lines got so jammed nobody could get through. Listen, one of the ironies of all this is that it takes too much tragedy to bring us to the reality of what God's purposed in our lives. We just roll along and we're okay and we're happy enough, but we're not considering ourselves part of the army of God. You know, if I choose to be ungrateful or unhappy, I said if I choose to be ungrateful, you know, that's a choice you make. If I choose to be unhappy, now joy comes from inside, but happiness is about what's around me. It's about the way I live my life on a daily basis. If I choose to be unhappy, I'm wasting what God's given me. I don't have time to be unhappy. There's no time to be unhappy because I'm guilty of questioning God's wisdom and His goodness and His blessings in my life. Anybody have drainage? Felt like a moment ago I was about to sneeze. Now I feel like I'm going to cough. And you just want to go. That's what that's the way you speak when you go to Amsterdam. I learned that. I thought everybody there was sick for about a week. I didn't know. They were just talking. Let's play a simple game. Let's start today playing Where's God? Will that be a good game? Where's God? It's the God sighting game. Where do you see God? Most of us not even looking for God. When you start looking, you'll find Him. We don't see Him in the phone call from a friend who hadn't talked to us in 3 or 4 years. We don't see Him in the fact that the sun will shine today. Instead of that, we complain, it's too hot. I'm burning up out here in this sun. Wait a minute. Is that not a blessing? Why does the sun never shine again? We have the dark winter. We don't see Him in the nice email that somebody gets saying, thank you for speaking with me. Thank you for the gift. Thank you for the card. We don't see Him in the friend who just drops by for a moment just to say they care about us and they love us. We don't see Him in the note from the grandchild with the good news of their graduation or their marriage or their new baby that's coming. We don't see Him in the cut that heals itself in our body. We just assume that's the way it should be. Can you see God in any of that? If you're looking for Him. If you start paying attention, you'll see God almost everywhere. The fingerprints of God are everywhere for the believer to see. Amen. We just walk by and ignore it. I've learned that if you keep your eyes open, pretty soon you'll see God everywhere. The blessings of God are all around us. Now, the world doesn't see it. They just think it's the way it always has been, it's always the way it'll be. And most of our problems come not from not seeing God in the small things, but looking always for the spectacular answers to prayer. But God says, that's not the only place you'll see me. If you'll really come alongside me, you'll see me everywhere all the time. Look for my fingerprints in the small things of your life. Look for when my blessing comes to you with the avoidance of the wreck, with the avoidance of some medical diagnosis. We should be praying every day. You know, there's a song that says, open my eyes, Lord. Let me see Jesus. We need to be praying, Lord, open my eyes, my spiritual, my supernatural eyes, the eyes to my heart that will let me see you everywhere. You've probably seen this following quotation. It comes from the Quakers, over 200 years old, and it says, I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer this or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. You know, on this earth, we're not immortal. When you die, they'll take your body and they'll put you in a box. They'll put the box in the ground. Everybody go eat chicken and laugh. Tears will dry. And all those things that you thought could never get done if you weren't here will somehow get done. Just the way it is, folks. This is not forever. We are forever. The old body will go to dust, but my spirit will live forever. We're all going to do some serious box time unless Jesus comes back. We won't escape it unless there's a rapture. My point is, do whatever good you're going to do. Do it now. Do it today. Do it tomorrow. If you intend to do some good deed, do it now. If you've got some great plan, work on it now. If you've got a word that you haven't spoken to someone, speak to them today. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them how important they are in your life. You can take it easy later. You got plenty of time for that in the box. You can rest then. Not trying to be irreverent, but we're all going to die unless Jesus comes back. And the point is, I was born, I blinked, and I die. Philosophy of life. My goal is to die young at a very old age. Does that make sense? That's my goal. I'm doing pretty good. I want to go down serving and loving and laughing and having a good time. Carol knows I like to have a good time. No matter what the situation is, I have a good time. When they finally put me in the box and lower me in the ground, I know it's not me. It's just the old house I lived in. To live like you were dying is, and Tim McGraw probably didn't know this when he was singing that song, one of the most biblically based philosophy of life ever discovered. From the day you were born, you started to die. But that's not true in eternity. We will live forever. So when you were spiritually born again, you began a life that has no death. Hallelujah. Think about that. Born on earth, started dying from the time you took your first breath. Born in the eternal realm, goes forever. Never decay. Never hurt. The life of faith means that you live until you die and you don't die until you're dead. So, now I may have confused you with that one. I don't want to die before I'm dead. Do you? And I don't want to die until I'm dead. See, some people have an attitude of death. They're already dead. There are two ways to look at it. You can be dead in the way you live your life, or you can be dead spiritually. A lot of people, when they get into retirement, they consider it's all over. That's why I hate the word retirement. Don't retire, refire. Get fired up for God. Purpose to do everything He asks you to do. Be fully invested for the kingdom of God. Enjoy the life that God has given you. Live every day like you were dying. Live every day to the maximum potential that God has put in your life, and you will see a change. Stop dying today. Don't be dead today. Be alive. Come alive.